Hello and welcome to listen to this lecture. Hello everyone. The topic of this presentation is collaborative learning. What actually happens inside the group of learners? So in this presentation we are looking in more details that what does it actually mean when the pupils or students are studying and learning collaboratively. Collaborative learning can be defined as knowledge co-construction between learners. When we understand collaborative learning as knowledge co-construction, we define the knowledge also a little bit in a different way compared to the traditional idea what knowledge is. So the knowledge is seen more like an idea improvement rather than that it's something stable or something which exists only in the mind of individuals and is expected to be transmitted and revealed. And therefore, the aim of collaborative learning is to develop learners' understanding and to construct new knowledge through social interaction and through certain forms of social interaction. And there is, based on the research and scientific studies, there is a lot of evidence that active learning behavior, such as participation in knowledge co-construction activities, can lead to high quality learning outcomes. But the precondition for successful knowledge co-construction is that students have required skills to participate productively into knowledge co-construction activities. And that is basically from the learning science point of view that also gives the argument that why actually collaborative learning is effective. But also we need these same skills in our everyday life and also in working life, in all fields basically. Because participation in productive knowledge co-construction activities and collaboration is one of the key competencies which we need in today's society when we are solving complex problems together. Paul Kirchner and his colleagues have defined 4 interaction processes which basically form a route from individual and unshared to co-constructed knowledge. And these forms of interaction are externalization, internalization, negotiation, and integration. Externalization means that the students are able to express their ideas and think aloud and express what they know and also give argument about their opinions and prior knowledge and so on. Internalization means that the students or learners are able to understand what the others are expressing and elaborating, which leads to the assimilation or accumulation, basically leads to modification of their prior knowledge structures. Negotiation means that they have the skills to give arguments and counter arguments and so on. And integration basically means that they are able to integrate different perspectives and form a coherent view of the phenomena at hand. So if we are thinking about collaborative learning situations, These processes can take a forms of sharing one's own knowledge, providing or asking questions and providing answers, and synthesizing and summarizing the contents of joint discussions. And this kind of discussions where learners are actively presenting new knowledge, asking questions, elaborating and giving elaborative answers, and summarizing the discussions are shown to indicate enhancement of students' deep learning and achievement. And in general, it can be stated that more engaged the group members are in ongoing and constant elaboration of collaborative tasks, more high quality learning they achieve. So the process is highlighted more than the outcomes. But if we are thinking about productive and successful collaborative learning, it's not enough that students are engaging in these productive interaction forms or knowledge co-construction activities like sharing ideas, negotiating and providing arguments. They also need to regulate the group processes. So successful collaborative learning requires both active knowledge co-construction and also socially shared regulation of learning. So the productive interactional processes require the ability to regulate group work by planning, monitoring, controlling and evaluating joint learning processes. This means that group members need to discuss and negotiate also in meta level to become aware of their group's working process and to increase the possibilities to coordinate for their goals, plans and their strategies. Especially task-related monitoring is regarded as a fundamental coordination process in productive collaborative learning. Monitoring includes the quality control of learners' progress, aiming for identifying inconsistencies in collaborative learning processes. Monitoring in group interaction involves reflecting one's own and peers' understanding, thinking, and overall progress during the task. And effective and continuous task-related monitoring is essential for providing the group members possibilities to become aware of each other's understanding of the joint task and of the content they are working with, as well as the skills and the strategies that are needed in the task. And based on various studies, it can be said that groups where learners actively monitor their own and their peers' thinking and understanding engage in deep level learning processes compared to the groups in which the task is not actively monitored. Then if we look at the groups, authentic groups who are working with collaborative tasks, it's interesting to see that how they actually engage to different knowledge co-construction activities. There are studies, including our own, which shows that actually even the most successful groups doesn't use the whole working time for knowledge co-construction activities. For example, in our own study, where we followed teacher education students for 6 weeks in environmental course, and the students were working with various collaborative tasks for 2 hours twice a week. We followed and video recorded the small group working, and then we looked at how they actually worked together, what kind of forms of knowledge co-construction occurred, and also what kind of task monitoring activities occurred during collaborative work. And we noticed that the groups spent approximately half a time of each 2-hour study session for knowledge co-construction activities. Rest of the working time was spent for activities like reading learning material, discussing with teacher, or discussing about social issues, and also discussing about the coordination of group activities. And also other studies that has received similar results, and showing that relatively small part of the interaction between small group members are focused on exchange of or asking for task-related information. But in our own studies, of course, there were differences between the groups. So some of the groups used more time than the half of the time for knowledge co-construction, and some less. And if we look in general, there were in our studies we had 5 small groups which we observed and whose collaborative work we analyzed. We saw that the most used form of knowledge co-construction was information sharing and asking questions, and the least used form was making summaries. As you can see from the figure, again there were differences between small groups in the different forms of knowledge co-construction activities. Based on the findings of previous research and also our own research, we also saw that groups who actively participated into knowledge co-construction processes, they had the greater amount of events, including knowledge co-construction activities, but also they engage in more high level knowledge co-construction. And high level means that for example in our study the group who was active in terms of knowledge co-construction, they were constantly summarizing and integrating the discussions. So basically reminding that what we have been discussing now and where should we go now. So they were all the time like making summaries and integrating the previous discussions and others' opinions to their own and so on. In this figure, this is from our own study. We compared 2 groups. So the one group, the group 4, which was the most passive one, so they had the least amount of events including knowledge co-construction activities, and group 5, who was the most active one. And as you can see, of course the group 5 had more amount of different forms of or events including different forms of knowledge co-construction, but they have relatively much more these summarizing events compared to the least active one or the most passive one. And of course it's interesting to think that what does this tell, that why the other groups are really like actively co-constructing knowledge and having more these high quality interaction forms, And one explanation which occurred from Korsal and Wallet's study was that the level of collective interest might explain group members' commitment into active and high-quality knowledge co-construction. So if the group has a desire to deeply understand, they are really interested and they want to understand the phenomena and the learning material, they more probably have and engage high-level collaborative knowledge construction. And also we found out that, and this is in line with earlier studies also, that when the group is actively involved in knowledge co-construction, they also engage more in task-related monitoring. The research is evidencing a positive correlation between group members' adoption of regulation activities and content processing strategies and transactive content-related discussions where students are constantly elaborating further each other's contribution. It's also evidenced that monitoring activities are strongly related to such types of knowledge co-construction activities and as questioning and explaining. In our own study, we found also out that the most active group in terms of knowledge co-construction was also more active in task monitoring or task-related monitoring. If we looked the 30-second events, that's how we analyzed the data, we noticed that in the active group, 40% of these 30-second events included task monitoring, while the same percentage within the most passive group was only 26. And also the quality or the forms of task monitoring varied between the most active and most passive group in terms of knowledge co-construction. So the most active group concentrated more in monitoring the content understanding. So they were like reflecting all the time that how we understand this, or what we understand, what we don't understand, and so on. That was the main difference, and the most passive group was more concentrating on monitoring task difficulty, which means that they were like discussing about which challenges they had and how difficult the task is and so on. Both groups monitored their progress quite actively. So they were like monitoring that are we now following the task and following the timetable and so on. And here are two data examples which kind of give a concrete idea that how in group work, how did it look like when the learners were actively monitoring the task. And this is the example from the most active group. This is they had a task that they had to create a lesson plan for fourth graders about ecosystems, and this is like a couple of examples how they monitor their content understanding. So when the group is discussing which contents of ecosystems they should teach to the fourth graders, one of the students say that is monitoring the content understanding and thinking aloud that now we are mixing up those contents which should be learned in upper secondary and in primary school, so we need to think what is important for primary school pupils. Later on, when the group is discussing about different elements of ecosystems, the same students is monitoring content understanding and saying that, so what elements does ecosystems include? I don't know. I'm totally lost now with this topic. Is the food chain part of ecosystem or part of forest ecosystem? Again, later on the group is discussing about the specific content about ecosystems which should be taught for 4th graders. Maria is saying that it feels like all these things are important and we don't have an understanding about the core issue, so it's, and Anni is continuing, and we don't know what kind of knowledge pupils already have. And Maria continuing again, and how you can know what is basic information and what information is complementary. So this is new thing for us, and we have to think carefully that what is the core of this issue. So they are constantly thinking about the content of the task and monitoring their own understanding or lack of their understanding. Another data example is describing that how the most passive group, they had the same task, that how they are during the session, during the class, how they are monitoring the task difficulty. So this is a situation where the group members were getting familiar with textbooks concerning the issues at hand, so the ecosystems. And Hanna is saying that why this feel so difficult now? Later on, when the group members are reading the national curriculum for primary education, Hanna is saying that I constantly get a feeling that are we seriously able to do this task? Can we teach Finnish ecosystems to 4th graders? And Jari is also expressing his worries by saying that this is a difficult task. And again, later on, when the group is discussing about the task, they include as part of the tasks that they want to include as part of their lesson plan. Hanna is saying that this is really very difficult. I have to be honest and tell you that for me this is really a difficult task. And Pekka is agreeing that yes, this is. So they were the kind of giving you some concrete examples that how this actually occurred, these monitoring activities occurred in group discussions. Okay, as a conclusion, it can be said that active knowledge co-construction needs also active regulation of learning, and especially socially shared regulation of learning. And also that active and high quality knowledge co-construction is not self-evident. And therefore students' collaboration skills, including skills for productive knowledge co-construction activities, has to be supported by a teacher. For example, by teaching how to summarize discussions and how to present good thought-provoking questions. And by prompting students' regulation activities, such as task-related monitoring, teachers can assist the students to engage such metacognitive processes that promote high-level knowledge co-construction. Okay, we continue the discussion with our face-to-face lecture. Thank you.